And it seems to be just your size. Where's he got to?
Hello. Splashy duck. Come on.
Lovely weather for ducks, hey Sarah?
Yep.
Oh, where's that coming from?
What is it, duck? It's raining. Yes, it is.
That's why we picked you.
I don't like the rain. It's wet.
You're an umbrella. Aren't you supposed to like the rain?
Yellow.
I like it. I can't understand it.
What's up, Tom? What's
Hey,
up,
what's
brother?
happening, Jake?
Yo, can
Okay,
you hear me?
great. Okay, yeah, I had to figure out how to press those two buttons. Had to add y'all. I didn't know how to press the add button, but yeah, that's perfect. How y'all doing though?
Good, man.
All right, that's what that.
All right, peace, brother. How you doing, Jay?
Good, too. How you doing, family?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Yeah, man. All right. Do we need to get on video here too, huh? Is it?
I'm
It
sorry.
looks like Zoom.
Yeah, I think we could just throw your camera on. I turn mine off for a second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can turn your camera on and off. You can mute yourself. All of that. Similar to Zoom functions.
And I got my little people here, Tom Hawk. So you're gonna be hearing them. My son's right here.
That's beautiful,
acting
man.
banana.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's great. You know what I mean?
My son's too old for that now.
Yeah, you grow up quick, huh?
Yeah, man.
Too
Yeah.
quick,
All right.
too
So this is what I'm gonna do, right? I'm gonna play the intro videos and all of that, and then we're gonna get started. Both videos is 1 minute long. And so yeah, I'm just gonna run that, then we can jump straight into the info, all right?
Cool.
So how the situation gonna go? We're gonna begin with what Two Hawks was presenting. He's gonna go in on the background, the true origins of where this Thanksgiving situation comes from, and then we're going to go into the actual events that has led up to where we are today, with this being a commercial holiday, if you will. You know what I mean?
Sure.
All right, appreciate y'all. One moment here while I don't know what happened, but I sent the links over to everybody so they could see the videos, and I don't know what my video is. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, but it's all good. I got it right here, so I'm about to run the video right now.
How's the family, man? I see you got your hands full over there.
Yeah, man. My daughter, she's watching Shara and Duck. This guy wants some attention, some ice cream, so.
That's how you got to do it when they're that young, man. That's beautiful. Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
No, don't pull that out. Don't pull that out.
Mine is, he'll be 17 next week, actually.
All right. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you. College bound now. We're looking.
Very good.
Oh, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, you got a long way to go with that one, but.
Yeah. I got some time with this guy here, so.
We live right now, y'all. So about to go and get it in, all right?
So I mean, I guess I mean I think it would be honorable for Two Hawks to just give us, a welcoming to what we're doing here and just honoring the ancestors. I think he's well versed at that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we was going to do that. I just wanted to run the intro video real quick.
Oh, okay. You got that.
Yeah, and then we're going to get directly to the introductions. You know what I mean?
Sure.
All right, appreciate it. 1 sec here. How do I do the screen share thing? What's going on? All right. If y'all can y'all let me know if y'all see the video? Because matter of fact, it's not even showing. Give me 1 second here. I'm missing something. Here we go. Bet that. All right, y'all. Yeah, so I just ran the video. Was I able to see it?
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Okay, cool, great. So yeah, let's go and get it in. So tonight we got Chief Two Hawks with us. He's going to introduce himself in a moment. You know, man with great experience. You know, very knowledgeable. We also have History with us. Another man of great experience, very knowledgeable also. So yeah, I'll let y'all go ahead and introduce yourselves. You know, Two Hawks, you go first.
Set it up, Chief.
Yeah. So woni na kan na tawa mag kanitang pag as kat the squab sa nutuis nisu wishiwanag chipanug sa icham to mashipag nahigansit ka katasud sa icham to nan higanag songtumok ka Director General to Federation of Aboriginal Nations of the Americas. And peace be unto you. Very blessed to be here this evening with y'all on the eve of the quote-unquote Thanksgiving. And blessed to be invited to just share some of the background and history and cultural context to the traditional celebration that has now been turned into what it is today. So thank you very much, Tomahawk, and looking forward to hearing the brother History speak as well.
Thank you, Two Hawks. I appreciate you. I appreciate you, Tony Tomahawk, for bringing me on. I guess I don't have as intricate of an introduction of myself, but I will let you know who I am and what I do. My name is Jay, for the most part. I run the History Instagram and Facebook situation. I'm a descendant of American Indians, and you know it goes back to as far back as I can find in my lineage. Find information. I was unfortunate to not have my lineage live through their ceremonial practices and things because they were, you know, moved off of their land via different means of segregation and so on and so forth. So I think we have a very good basis on perspective from someone who grew up knowing heritage, understood what he was, and understood that, you know, I couldn't be what I was, unfortunately, until, you know, now I just feel like I have no choice but to be who I am and represent that, no matter how disconnected I may have been from, you know, my ancestors. So I appreciate the brother Two Hawks. I get a lot of information and knowledge from him. And I thank brother Tony Tomahawk for sending, you know, all the information that he's been sending me, and, you know, us sharing ideas and building a network. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm grateful for both of y'all presence. You know, it's been a pleasure and an honor being in contact with you both. Two Hawks has been some, you know, we approaching like 4 years now, maybe.
Yeah, think about that, Tomahawk. Yeah,
that's about 4 years.
Time flies by.
Yeah, it's quick, right? a lot been going on the past 4 years. You know what I mean? And your History with you, man. Yeah, you got a nice body of work, man. Like you know, Chief Terewa. He's the one who referenced you to me and all of that. Says, yo, check out History. Like, you familiar with him? I'm like History. I like the name. You know what I mean?
That's a good brother right there. I was fortunate enough to actually meet him and actually Two Hawk's brother in person I got a bow from those brothers, and they were coming up from the Indigenous Peoples March last year. And, you know, that was the first time we connected, and it was beautiful. Brotherly love right off the bat, you know, and, you know, that's how we should meet each other, you know, outside of everything that we've been seeing, you know, in the news with certain celebrities and so on. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but, you know, we just got to do a lot better in meeting and greeting each other.
Absolutely, you know, and that's what this Aboriginal American Truths platform is about. You know, encouraging that quality amongst our American people. You know what I mean? We have to restore, you know, rejuvenate and reaffirm, you know, particular practices. You know what I mean? You know, customs and you know, just values that is known to us. You know what I mean? You know, be it as colonial and commercial situation that has impacted and devastated our people, our land, etc. You know, it has us where we are today. And, you know, at the end of the day, to me, in my opinion, you know, we have a duty and responsibility, such as what we're doing tonight, sharing to the audience, you know, quality information. You know what I mean? So I definitely look forward to what you all will be presenting. I have the links that you all sent me. So Two Hawks, the first link that I have here, it deals with King Philip's War.
Yeah, but I wanna reverse, because the last link is is the first one I want to start you with, and then I want to share mine, and then I'd like the brother Historial to speak if he's going to be speaking specifically to Thanksgiving, because my stuff kind of flows after that. So I think if we had a more robust conversation about the Thanksgiving and the origins and the impacts now, what I share after that can kind of fill in some of those gaps, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
That's perfect.
Okay, so let's start with the picture I sent you, because this is going to be some of the historical and cultural context. And before I share this, I want to, because I know a lot of us is, you know, we're at the point now where, you know that you have the bloodlines, you have the heritage, you know who your people are, you know what happened to you, you know, and a lot of us are like, well, what's next? And to me, the natural answer to that is understanding your culture and getting to know it more, and being very specific, because what I'm going to share right now is what I've learned and what's been taught to me, but it's not necessarily maybe what your people were taught. So what were your people taught? And that's the information you should be seeking out. There will always be intersections, but you want to know what your people taught and what your people believed, because when you interact with each other, just like the brother Historial shared, when you engage, you want to have something to share with someone new that you're meeting, right? You want to be able to represent your people and your culture to them, so that no matter where you link up at, hopefully after you met me, you would say, hey, I met an Narragansett Indian, you know, and I now know an Narragansett Indian, and I want to do the same with you. So with that context here, a lot of us here talk about Turtle Island, and there are several myths about different reasons why that is. One that was shared with me is that Sky Woman fell from the heavens, and in order to soften her fall, they rubbed mud on the back of a turtle, and that's kind of how the land came about. But that's just one. But there are several different teachings that are associated with different things, and in our way, we call this medicine. And if you notice, if any of you seen me play with my drum group, the name of the drum group is the Eastern Medicine Singers, because we understand that music is a form of medicine, and you can have good medicine or bad medicine. So the medicine that we share is the Eastern dialects and Eastern songs. But it's medicine, and that's why when you hear terms like medicine people and things of that nature, it's a position that usually people grow up being kind of instructed in, because there's these teachings that go along with it, and certain understandings that you're not going to know unless someone passes on to you. So usually medicine people are brought up from a very young age under the tutelage and instruction of other medicine people, be it men or women, and elders. And this is just one of the lessons. So if you see the turtle here, one of the things they talk about is 13 moons. Well, this also associates with the 13 cracks that are looked at in the medicine turtle. And those 13 cracks represent the 13 months, or 28 circles that the moon goes around. And if you notice around this particular turtle, there are 28 smaller cracks around the outside of it. So a lot of times they would utilize symbology to share certain teachings. And when we talk about the turtle, this is sort of like the medicine turtle. So you got the 13 cracks in the middle with the 28 smaller cracks, which represent the 28 days in a month. And you would have 13 months of 28 days, which I believe comes to 364. European calendar has 365. And then on some months, you got this day because they're all going by a solar calendar. But traditionally, we went by a lunar calendar, at least for my people. So now we can translate that over into the 13 moons because once again, 13 cracks represents the 13 moons. And these 13 moons, every moon represented something different in our year. So around March, and we did one 2 years ago. We couldn't do it last year because of COVID and everything. But we did our planting moon social. And this would be around the full moon in the March where you're going to be doing all of your planting. So we would do a lot of traditional things by the moon. And we would know that this moon means this. So we have a strawberry moon, planting moon, frost moon. The one that traditionally is now being celebrated as Thanksgiving was actually the harvest moon. And of course, why? Because all of the food's coming in. You planted, you sowed through the summertime, you took care of everything. Now you get into the fall, and this is when you start to harvest. And this is usually after the green corn moon, which is where we get the term skimitzen from. That's a Pequot term, but that's where that big powwow used to be at the Mashantucket Pequot, celebrating the green corn moon. But the harvest moon is the time when you harvest everything, and the initial sort of celebration that took place with the pilgrims, if you want to call it that, was actually in October around our harvest moon celebration. So all of these things, pretty much we had a Thanksgiving every month. Every moon was a time for celebration and social gathering. So especially when I hear people kind of, attacking Thanksgiving, I'm kind of split on it because I get it. I get what they've turned it into, but I'm also aware of what the origins are. So what I tell our people is, celebrate it as a time to gather with our people as we've always done. And if it just so happens that because of where we're at today, we get some time off around this time, this is when, usually people gather, then let's do it then. We're not doing it because we're celebrating how the colonists massacred our people, which I'm assuming we'll talk about in a little bit, but we're doing it because this is something we've always done. We've always celebrated. We've always gotten together. And because of contemporary times, we happen to do it today. So everyone, as you're out there and you're thinking about Thanksgiving, I want to encourage you all to first think about it through the eyes of the Aboriginal inhabitants that were here and why they were doing it. And it was a celebration on a monthly basis of what the moon represented for that particular time for us. And that was how we kind of engaged with our environment around us. That's how we knew how to survive. That's how we knew when it was time to migrate. That's when we knew when it was going to be rainy. That's when we knew when it was going to be hot, by following the moons and then passing this knowledge on down to those who come after us. So I'll leave that bit of information out there just as some cultural context in terms of where the actual tradition comes from and where the Europeans got it from. And then when we get into the actual first Thanksgiving, that was a situation, like I said, with the harvest moon gathering, but it was the Pokanokets that came and brought deer and some other things to the pilgrims. It was not the other way around. It was not a situation where they both shared with each other. It wasn't a situation where things were equal. It wasn't the pilgrims were destitute. They were on their last leg. They needed some help, and the Pokanokets went and shared some food with them. That's what the proper history of the Thanksgiving should be. And Tomahawk, if we actually look at the link from the Smithsonian, it's entitled "The Myths of the Thanksgiving Story and the Lasting Damage." This is a link that I'm assuming Tomahawk will send out to you, but it just goes through some of the history of it. And one of the main things that needs to be shared is that it was not a chummy time between all the Indians that were out here. When you're talking to pilgrims, you're talking specific to the Pokanoket, and that was one nation that was out here. But everyone within the Pokanoket nation wasn't necessarily fans of the pilgrim. And when you get to the tribes outside of the Pokanoket, none of them were really fans of the pilgrims. So the initial Thanksgiving that everyone reads about, not the one that's being celebrated today, but the one that everyone reads about, was the Pokanokets bringing food to the pilgrims to help them out because they were destitute. And from that, an alliance built that impacted things after that. those would be my initial thoughts. So I'll turn it over to the brother Historiel.
Thank you, brother. I'm sorry, I was muted. That was very informative. I really appreciate the breakdown of the exact information that you gave us, representing the separation of the celebrations that our peoples, did on a monthly basis. Maybe not a monthly basis for all tribes, but the Green Corn Festival was something you mentioned. And Tony, I don't know if you have the link for which one was it? There was one that had the Green Corn Festival. It was about festivals, Native American rituals and ceremonies. Do you have that link to Tom?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, I have it here. I'm about to pull it up right now.
Yeah, because that one touches on the Green Corn Festival, as well as some of the actual other ceremonies and traditions that our people celebrated. And there's something that I had posted on Instagram a while back, and I can get you the information on that. The Stomp Dance. The Stomp Dance was a Muskegee Creek and Seminole ceremonial dance that the Indians did at that particular time in the 1830s, 1840s. This was pretty much after the removal. That it's not going to be on there. These are some of the oral traditions that I've heard in my family. My family in Georgia, from my grandfather's side, traces back to Yamakra, which was a group of Indians that ended up coming together at a certain point in time. And there's this information when you go back to James Oglethorpe and Tamachichi down in the Savannah area in the 1730s, whereas Tamachichi took some of his people. And as Two Hawks referenced, there were some peace between the Europeans and our people at certain times. And there were things that we did together. And if just scroll down a little bit more where you can get into the body of the information so people can see that. Yeah, there it goes. The Green Corn Festival, and how it was, for the most part, allowing the people to know that their harvest was looking to be a successful harvest, so that they can, reap the benefits of the three sisters that, that our people utilized as their way of actually helping themselves to grow and nourish themselves. And when you look at the three sisters, they were celebrated, just as a ceremony, just as the harvest festivals or the harvest moon festivals towards the end of the summer. And the reason why people celebrated those corn, beans, and squash was because of the fact that they grew in unison together. The corn stalks were able to allow the beans to grow, and the squash was able to keep the weeds at bay, as well as provide nitrogen to the soil, for everything to coincide together. So, these are things that our people looked into, and they knew from thousands and thousands of years of using these crops and celebrating these things and giving thanks and reverence to the Creator. So, these aren't things that, folks came over here and just noticed. They wrote about it. There was somebody named James Adair. I think it's on this, if you go to page 2, it might give you the references on here, or it might be from the other link. I'm sorry, I don't recall. But there's references on both of these links. If you maybe want to put them into the chat or something like that for people to see, they can look on there and see the books that were written in the 1700s, whereas people like George Washington commissioned James Adair to follow 40 different tribes over the course of 40 different years and track and write down the ceremonial practices from A to Z, everything that he saw across the southeastern part of the United States. So I don't want to monopolize the time, but I want to make sure that people, see exactly what's coming out of Two Hawk's mouth they could see it, verbatim right there in writing by various scholars all over the place. Not that the brother's not a credible source, but most people need some other type of source that's easily referenced. So that's why, we put these links here. But anything that comes out of the brother's mouth, I know is a wealth of information, and people should definitely start to listen to this brother because he's a natural leader. And I think our people need to see more of people like him in places of need that can be, utilized to help people get things done right now. Given the political realm we look at today, I would vote for him to be president tomorrow. Shit, I voted for myself to be president as a protest, so I mean it's not that far-fetched.
Yeah, Jay, that's appreciated on what you just shared right there. Definitely, yeah, Two Hawks for president.
Oh yeah, you got my vote, bro.
I got enough time with my own family, brother. Please, I got enough time with my own clan and tribe. Please, brother, I appreciate it. Much respect.
But hey,
please, no, I got enough issues with my people.
I'll endorse whoever you endorse. How about that?
Look, I'm focused on tribal stuff. I let the Americans do what the Americans do, man. This is their country. Let them have it. That's my thought.
We the Americans,
they brother, I'm a Narragansett from Mashapog, brother. I respect all the things.
With you. So so I appreciate everything that you all have shared to this point right now. It's been definitely good. This Green Corn Festival, the background about the turtle and the symbology, what it represents, the initial relations during the colonial periods, that's really what I want to get into. Because to me, with the abuses, the injustices, the discriminatory practices that was taking place then, it's still happening now. You see what I'm saying? 1619 is the reference point for the foreigners, the colonizers, in regards to this quote unquote Thanksgiving situation. You see what I'm saying? They've made it a completely commercial concept right now. They've taken the indigenous Aboriginal American nations customs, of gathering with your people and things of this nature, this time period being, as you said, Two Hawks, a monthly situation, right? Where we're harvesting, we're working, we have a relationship with the land, we have a relationship with each other, but they've transformed this into strictly here comes Black Friday. Yeah, you're gonna meet with your relatives today. All right, y'all gonna make a mess at your elders' home. They're gonna eat all the elders' food. You're gonna leave a mess and you're gonna go shopping. Right?
Well, how many people had arguments about even if they were gonna meet up because of the coronavirus? I know families that's arguing each other down about getting tested and so on and so forth. So they controlling your thought process on whether or not you even meet with your people. So
that's the new situation.
Yeah.
But you see, like I grew up, I'm an 80s baby, right? So my grandmother to this day, right? She tells me how she remembers in my youth, right? When I was around, I was the only one that would stick around and help her cook the food, help her prepare whatever. And then when everybody else leaves, I'm the one remaining, taking out the trash, cleaning up, making sure everything is good. You know what I mean? Because I couldn't. I used to scratch my head like, yo, why they acting like that? Like grandma just spent like 2 days preparing. 2 days preparing.
I feel you, man. That's one of the things in my family. We never wrote down recipes, so if you wasn't in the kitchen, you wouldn't know how to make nothing. And I've been trying to get my son in the kitchen for 17 years, man. It ain't working. So he ain't gonna learn how to make pumpkin cheesecake, lemon meringue pie, none of that.
Hey, brother, I like that you just said that, right? Because I had a thought the other day in conversation with someone, and just talking about the concept that Europeans used when they came here around being civilized and savages and all that. And one of the things that they utilized was that we didn't have any written system, right? So we didn't have anything written down. So now I know that's debatable, but that's what one of their basic arguments. But to me, what you just shared is exactly why being forced to have a written system, in my opinion, is actually being less civilized. Because we dealt with each other on a level where I didn't need to write it down because you knew my word was my bond. If I said it, that's what it was. And I understood that about you. And truth be told, if either of us broke our word, that could lead to someone's death.
Oh, yeah,
that's how
absolutely.
serious. So now you have these people coming along and you can't trust their word. You got to read what was written because they'll say anything and then say, oh, but we wrote this. And so to me, I think that point right there, that if you're not in this kitchen to learn this, then you don't get it. That's what I was talking about earlier about the medicine teachings. You know what I'm saying? If you're not here around me to learn this, you won't know it. So if you don't know it because you weren't around, then I know that, and your tribe would know that you're not fit for that position. You weren't even around. You weren't there to learn. You didn't. So this is where all of the rituals came in, why the young men would go off with the warriors at certain times, why the young ladies would go off with the women at certain times. You have to be around to learn these things. And it's just tough if you're not. No matter how much you read about it, it's just tough if you're not. So I just want to encourage everyone, and I just want to give some clarity to my own situation. So I definitely grew up, I was knowing I was a Narragansett, but I grew up in the city. Like, you know what I'm saying? I grew up sides of town, was beefing with each other. I went to public school, all of that. My focus came after my grandmother passed in 2006. And she had been asking me for years just to get involved with the culture, just to get involved with the tribe. I needed to remember who my people were. You know, that stuff was in one ear and out the other. I was going to play ball. I was going to do whatever. So I say that to say, don't ever feel like it's too late. Don't ever feel like, you know, it's too hard, that it's taken too long. As long as you're on the path to trying to learn about yourself, you're doing what you're supposed to do. And you shouldn't be competing with anyone about how much knowledge you have, about, you know, how far back your genealogy. You shouldn't be doing any of that. What you should be saying is, I need to be honoring to my ancestors by knowing who they are and what they went through. Because if you know who they are and what they went through, then you'll have a better perspective on what's going on today and what steps you should or should not. Because that's the other key part, what you should not do. What you should not do. And when we get into some of the King Philip's War stuff in the lead up, I'll share a little bit about what we should not be doing and what we should be doing in terms of addressing a lot of the issues that are going on today.
Awesome. Hey, Tony, before we go further, I just want to touch one last point on Thanksgiving. If you could show that link, I don't know if you got it in your email just a minute ago, the Native American cuisine of the Southeastern Indians, where it shows the same types of.
I'm about to pull it up right now.
Okay. Well, I could just touch on it real quick. It's a very quick point. There were people, scholars, or whomever you want to call them, that study the Southeastern region and some of the native cuisines that were in that area. And going from the Caribbean, where the cassava root was utilized as one of the main staples of the diet of the people around the what you would call the Gulf of Mexico region, into the mainlands of the United States. Well, the Gulf Coast states such as Florida, Louisiana, Alabama, those states also had similar cuisine concepts when it came to the foods that they ate. And when you traditionally go back to that time of the conquistadors in the 1500s, all the way through the 1700s, they were utilizing the staple products that we had here and bringing them back to Europe. They had no potatoes there. They had no tomatoes in Italy, so Italians can't take credit for tomato sauce and pizza and so on. So, avocados made their way to Spain in the 1700s under the Andalusian, I guess, or the Achaemenid Empire under Abdul Rahman. So, there were a lot of our foods that were making their way across the way, but they knew that there was food in abundance here. I mean, they called it the land of milk and honey. They wrote about it in their Christian Bible. Columbus talked about, coming here to be able to, eat and take back spices, as the jokes that we have today, shake and bake ain't fried chicken. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of things that reference the people who are still here eating the same foods. If you click on Southeastern Native cuisine, you'll see certain things like hominy grits, chitlins, some of the things that some of our grandmothers used to perfect in. Go down underneath the contents, and it's 2.3. You see the contents box at the top? Go back up. The contents box off to the left, 2.3. And you see that saying by, I can't really see it, Charles Hudson. If you could read that, Tony, I can't even really see it too well on my screen.
All right, great. Yeah, thank you for pointing that to me right now. So it says here, to a far greater degree than anyone realizes, several of the most important food dishes of the southeastern Indians live on today in the soul food eaten by both black and white settlers. Southerners. Hominy, for example, is still eaten. Soft-key live Soki live on is grits. Cornbread is used by Southern cooks. Indian fritters, variously known as hoe cake or Johnny cake. Indians boiled cornbread is present in Southern cuisine as cornmeal dumplings and as hush puppies. Southerns cook their beans and field peas by boiling them, as did the Indians. Like the Indians, they cure their meat and smoke it over hickory coals. That's Charles Hudson, the Southeastern Indians.
Now, thank you, Tony, for that. I swear it's so small on my screen I can't even see it. But my grandfather told me stories about when he was growing up in Moultrie, Georgia. He was there till he was 14 years old. And he would tell me stories about his grandfather and things that he used to do as being a well digger. And, a lot of the things that they did was trading. And to be able to set up the town of Moultrie in 59 it was, they utilized the services of indigenous well diggers, and they helped them to irrigate and find water underneath the ground. And that was something that was done by people in my family. My great-great-great-grandfather, who has the same name as my son, who I named after. And, for the most part, I'm looking at the things that we did as farmers, as people who were able to irrigate land. And, I'm looking at it from a perspective of, if you came from an entirely different continent, you would have to take hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years to really learn how to aggregate yourself to be able to acclimate to a landmass in which you can thrive, unless you had indigenous people, leading the way. And just by Mr. Hudson's statement there, looking at Johnny cakes and hoe cakes and cornmeal dumplings and hush puppies and, calling it soul food, it only speaks volumes of who he's talking about when he talks about soul food. Because the only people that I know that have indulged themselves in soul food and actually make these things and know how to, I guess, tear down a kitchen, as a lot of women would say, so a lot of our indigenous women would say, and why is it right there in our face, but we don't know anything about who we are? And for me, that's always been the problem that I've had with people that I speak to. And I never make the claim that all so-called Black or African-American people in this landmass are Indians or whatever type of tribal nation they come from. What I do say is that we shouldn't be left out. And there are a damn sure a lot of us here. And, we've always been overlooked in history. I don't want to take too much time, but we'll go into some of the things when we talk about wars and stuff, looking at some of the famous figures in indigenous history, such as Crispus Attucks and Frederick Douglass. And these folks having ties to having indigenous mothers and white fathers, but having brown skin and labeled African American. So, those are some of the things I know Two Hawks it's very versed on, and, maybe some of the points in which he'll be talking about some of the Native American slavery, even going back before 1619.
Yeah, Jay, that was great. I appreciate you sharing that. In regards to the food, this this is a tremendous key in my experience in travels. I've been across the country, right? And you know, one thing about food, you know, what people you know, eat, if you will, that defines their culture. You see what I'm saying? It's definitive of this. You know, across the country, I mean, it's amazing. All right, like okay, if these people are from quote unquote Africa, how come they all cook purely American food? Like purely, you know, no one else in the world cooks what we cook. And what was crazy to me when I was in LA some years ago, there was a Caucasian woman that was cool with the local artists, right? And so she was telling me how she noticed other Caucasian women, they were popularizing collard greens. Like all of a sudden, like collard greens was now selling for like $20.
Wow.
You know what I mean? I'm like, so
collard greens had a market, huh?
yeah, and it was, you know, it was strange enough. Like here it is. I mean, I guess she was trying to make conversation with me and my ex partner, right? So you know, we used to go to the park every day, right? So we're in the park and we see the woman, and she's like, yeah, how y'all doing? Da 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 da. So you know, it's that time of year, this holiday season, right? And so now she wants to talk about collard greens, like random. So I look at my ex partner, like, yo, man, like, why she? I'm looking at it like, why she want to talk to us about collard greens? And then it just caught my ear when she said, yeah, $20 for like half a pound. And I'm like, that's how my grandmother wouldn't pay for that. Like it's since when do y'all eat collard greens? You know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, you know,
bushel. Shit.
By a bushel, right?
$20 for that. I mean, that's a lot of collard greens.
I remember my grandmother had these huge pots of collard greens, and how she decorated it, you know what I mean? Like different flavors and this, that, and the other in it, you know what I mean? Like,
and all sorts of other stuff, man.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So, you know, it's just very interesting, and that's why I wanted to do this presentation so that we can inform the people of these particular truths here. You know what I mean? Like, in my opinion, we cannot continue to co-sign the theft of our culture.
But you know what'll happen? You know what'll happen, Tomahawk? People will say, "Oh, well, you know, they brought people over here, and after being here for 50 years, you're gonna learn how to make some collard greens." You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the funny part about it. That's how they make their argument based off of just invalid, just information. Without any clarity of looking into who they are.
Hey, brother, that's why I try to just stick straight to the genealogy, because no matter what you try to argue from that perspective, there's always a counter argument.
Oh, yeah.
No matter if it's logical or not, they'll find. So I stick straight to this is who I am. And it's so funny, and this is going to be underlying from my remarks. I got some of the other tribes around here of extended family members upset. They're now starting a rumor that I'm adopted. They sunk that low. Now I'm after everything else failed, he's adopted. I got told that I forged documents.
Well, they got to tell you your brother's adopted too, because y'all look just alike, bro.
Listen, you know what I'm saying? Listen, I got people. I posted a pic of my mother and grandmother and great grandmother. They had an elder put on there. I remember your grandmother walking you to school back. So like, it's just so absurd. But the point being, if people don't want to believe it, they're not gonna believe it. You know what I'm saying? I don't even like to get into it. I'll check disrespect. If someone's being disrespectful, I'll check them in a minute. But I got no interest in going back and forth about who people think I am anymore. I just tell them, now come take the visit. Just come out here to Rhode Island. Let's sit down and talk about it. I don't want to do it over social media. Oh, you're not coming? Okay, I'm on about my business, because if we're talking Indian stuff, that's how it would have been back in the day. You got an issue with me, you would come see me. I got an issue with you, I'll come see you. I'm on that time. I don't want to do this over social media.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, it's a lot of confusion out here, and definitely it is vital for the people to stay focused, and hopefully what you said right there too, Hawks. Hopefully the listeners can employ that in their activities. You know what I mean? Because going back and forth, debating and arguing and getting your emotions invested into something as frivolous as what someone believes that's based on fallacy is absurd. It's wasteful. We have serious priorities out here. Yeah, I mean, we got too many real world situations going on out here. You know, I saw the situation that happened in Rhode Island a couple months ago with a young man on a bike. That was horrible. You see what I'm saying? I would like to be able to discuss that, but we could do that another time. You know what I mean? But it's so many wild things going on. And all the energy that goes into the confusion is just purely wasteful. It takes away from real issues that are affecting and impacting the lives of entire communities and populations of the people.
And that's the strategy, Tomahawk. That's why they want it done that way. Mm-hmm. And this is I want to share this with everyone as well. Everything we do, at least how my people understand it, it all starts in the spiritual and it plays out in the physical. So we're in spiritual warfare before we even see anything physical going on. And your energy being directed at arguing with some fool online about whether you were copper colored or not, it does nothing to move you forward. It does nothing to address any of the real life issues you have going on. It sucks the energy out of you. And the spiritual warfare is being won on their side because instead of you working on educating your family about this stuff, instead of you working on, structuring yourself financially to be able to conduct yourself properly, you online for hours, posting pictures, posting history that this other person don't give a damn about at all. It's an energy sucking sort of strategy to keep you from focusing on what we should be focusing on, and don't engage in it. I mean, like I said, every once in a while you need to check someone or you just feel like having a good dialogue, cool, but please don't, because I was there for a while. Please don't invest so much of your time that you're neglecting other important things in life. This is life. Created, blessed us with it. As hard a road as it's been and so much that we've gone through, we're here today. We're having this dialogue, which means we're forward thinking. And that means there's a chance to do better. And let's direct our energy towards that, because we don't need these energy vampires out here taking away from what we should be focusing on. And that's identifying ourselves, getting back with our families, building up our communities, and getting back to how it used to be before this colonization craziness started.
Absolutely. Yo, how do y'all want to proceed? Jay, you want to add to that, or how you want to go?
Man, he just said a mouthful, man. Like it's hard to follow that. You know what I'm saying? But man, the one thing I will say, you made a great point in a segue situation with regards to things that have happened in the past continuing to happen continuously to now. And just one real quick point I want to make. I've been involved in several different, I guess, groups or organizations that have been trying to make change throughout the United States as we see it. And one of the groups is called the Middle Passage Marker. And it would be a good idea for a lot of different people to actually go and check it out, see what you think, because, it's hard for me to sit and discuss things with a bunch of, I guess, 60-plus-year-old white women, for the most part. There's never any white men on there, of course. But, the white women always want to be there to help and I guess take some of the things that we feel as people and take them off our shoulders, if that makes any type of sense. I guess the reverse of the Karens out there. But these are more of the older women. And, I appreciate having a dialogue and a conversation with them. But it's difficult because, for one, and I told them, being someone who's a descendant of two people that I know for certain, that were enslaved. And that, to me, was the first part of the conversation that we had. I told them that my people weren't slaves. That was something that I can't stand. They weren't black. They weren't slaves. They were people who were enslaved at a certain point in time. My great grandfather was a fisherman. He was he was a hunter. He was, a father. He was a grandfather. He was a lot of different things. He wasn't a slave. He was put into a situation, unfortunate for himself, in order to have to take care of, the 9 children that he had. So, when we look at the way that even that situation happened in my own family, I know there's many other people that has happened to, across the Northeast. And, working with these groups, I found out that Rhode Island was one of the biggest slave trading places in the United States. And I actually met one of the people who did a video called Traces of the Trade. And Traces of the Trade was a family of people, of slave owners through the Wolf line, which were one of the biggest slave owning families in the United States. And they lived above the Mason-Dixon line. So, these parts of history, a lot of things that we don't even know. And, some of the things, this last point that I'll touch on is that they intermingled some of their, programs or companies, so to speak. So if they owned a plantation, if they lived in Bristol, Rhode Island, they would own a plantation in Cuba. And from that plantation, they would run some of their rum that they created from their sugarcane plantations and ran that up to the southeastern coast, where they were selling moonshine and rum, up the coast, and creating situations where a lot of Indians were becoming drunk all the time. And then what they were doing was giving them guns and money and telling them to go catch some slaves so that they can, force them to go into the Caribbean. So, when we look at the history of the slave trade, they never talk about things that happened here, and those things that happened in the past where guns are coming into different communities. We don't make guns. We don't manufacture guns. We don't own gunpowder farms. We don't do any of that. So, for Black people to own guns, AR-15s and also, we can't even get permits for that stuff. So, who's bringing that in there? Who's funding it? Who's putting the drugs and having a war on crime and a war on drugs and all these different wars against people of color in this country since 1492? And we're still voting for people and trying to put some other people in the White House that have continued to keep our people last. We've been last when it comes to getting education. We've been last when it comes to getting health care. We've been first when it comes to dying. We've been first when it comes to being incarcerated. But none of those things have ever worked in our favor, whether or not a Democrat or Republican was in there. I think I talked a little bit too long, but, I just wanted to throw those things out there before I know we're going to get blessed by Mr. Two Hawks over here on the King Phillips War. Thank you. Tony, you there, bro?
My bad. I had to put myself. My grandmother called and put myself on mute. I thought I took myself off of mute, and I'm complimenting what you said. Like, yeah, keep going. Everything needs to be said.
I mean, I don't want. It's after 7. I got mac and cheese in the oven. I had to turn off. I got to check that.
Yeah, I got the things moving. I do appreciate y'all time. I don't want to be inconsiderate of your time and what y'all got.
But I want to hear the brother Two Hawks. What do you got to talk about with the King Phillips War? This is, I don't know if you remember Two Hawks. I had sent you something on a DM one time, a picture of something that was in a museum. There was an Indian on the ground, and there was another one with a club, and you told me that was one of your ancestors that was murdered by someone else. And when I looked at him, he had, like 3-4 braids in his hair, and he looked like a brother. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I'm looking at him, and then for you to tell me that was one of your ancestors, or one of your tribal members, I can't remember which it was, but if you, remember that, we'll talk on that real quick.
So, man, I'm trying to think who that could have been.
You know what? If you can't remember right now,
I'll let it stew. Yeah, I'll let it stew. If you remember a name while I'm talking, or if I can remember what you're saying while I'm talking, then I'll definitely I'll be happy to share about it. But my mind is just frozen for a moment.
I'll find it. Don't worry.
All right. So, Tom Hawk, do you want me to go into the King Phillips War stuff now, or how would you like to progress? Sir?
Definitely. I would definitely like to go into that. If possible, because I have the links that you sent, right? But if you can you begin with what you're aware of in regards to what led up to the King Phillips War?
Yes, absolutely.
And the reason why I say that is because as I said initially, right, the same issues that we experienced that our ancestors experienced in the initial periods of colonization, all the abuses, all the criminal activities brought by the foreigners, the encroachments of land and this, that, and the other, right? these were all precursors to these wars and conflicts. You see, so yeah, Two Hawks, I have the links that you sent over.
Sure.
Feel free to let me know which one I should pull up.
We're gonna start with the one with Verrazano, and I'm gonna start by saying what the brother Historiel just shared is exactly the point that I'm gonna be making in all of this information that I share. Our issue has always been us. We've been our own issue, and the Europeans exploiting us. So, the same things that they were doing back then, running guns into our neighborhoods, bringing in alcohol and drugs, that's how they were doing it back then. And if we don't know our history, if we don't know that that's the strategy that's been being used since colonization started, we won't identify it going on today. So I want to start today with just a little bit about who the New England nations are, and kind of what their experiences were, because in my opinion, the New England nations are where the English colonists got their foothold, and the English colonists are the ones that created America and eventually the U.S. And right now we're all under the U.S. So it's with absolutely no disrespect to any other cultures, because they're all very important and all of their experiences are important. But when we're talking this thing called the U.S. and what everyone's dealing with today, it really gets its foothold up in New England. So I think it's important that everyone have just a good understanding of what took place up here, because I think it will help to once again explain a lot of what's going on with the U.S. today. So we start in 1524, and this is when Giovanni de Verrazano visits Narragansett Bay. This is contemporarily the area where you probably have heard of where the Pokanoket are at, Patumtuck. But he sailed into this bay, and you can scroll down. It's about to the third or fourth paragraph. No, up a little bit further. Yeah. Let me see. A little bit further up. So right there. So he comes into the bay. He gets looking off the boat. And as you can see right here, it says, for 15 days, Verrazano and his crew were with the Narragansett honored guests through the Indians. Although Verrazano admitted that they kept their woman out of sight after hearing the sailors' irksome clamor whenever females came into view. So I wanted to share this element because my people were first acknowledged as early as 1524, and I think that there's actually something before that. And when we were acknowledged, there was no sort of conversation about savagery, no sort of conversation about being uncivilized. As a matter of fact, they acknowledged, he goes on to say that we were some of the nicest looking people that he had met, and we were consistently praying to Creator above. So when you're talking New England engagements with Europeans, you're talking prior to English. So you're first talking Verrazano here with the Italians. Then you're talking the Dutch, who had a small outpost up here in the Rhode Island region, but not too much. They were mainly down in the New York, New Jersey areas down there. And then after that come the English into this space. And when the English get here, this is where kind of the time frame around Thanksgiving and all that. The Pilgrims are destitute, they're struggling. But what's really going on is the reason why there's even an opportunity for them to sign a peace treaty is because the Pokanokets are fighting with the Narragansetts. And the Narragansetts are fighting with everyone. The Narragansetts are fighting with Pequots. The Narragansetts are fighting eventually with Mohegans. We're okay with the Niantics, but we consider them to be a subject tribe to us. There's just a whole bunch of fighting that's going on up into this region. And then when the diseases hit, it wipes out a large part of the Massachusetts population. That it empowers the Pokanoket Nation. They're in control of the Wampanoags, with the groups that eventually become known as the Wampanoags down in South County. Down in the Cape Cod region. And in the midst of all of this infighting that's going on, the Europeans began to create a stronghold. So when they form a peace treaty with the Pilgrims in 1621, and actually this coming April 1st, there's the 400th year celebration of that peace treaty between the Pokanokets and the Pilgrims. My people weren't happy about that. So we sent off a war challenge to the Pilgrim settlement, I do believe it was, a bundle of arrows wrapped together. And that was a sign of war for us. I'm going to shoot my arrows at you. And they ended up sending us back some bullets and gunpowder. So we didn't really know how to, we didn't really know how to work with that. So we decided to watch for a bit. and things began to unfold. Eventually, you have a situation, and just for a little bit of context, the Pequots are not originally from this area of New England. They made their way here from the Mohawk Valley region after fighting with the Mohawks. And after beefing with the Mohawks for a while, they kind of migrated up this way and settled in the area where the Niantics were and actually split the tribe. So you have an Eastern Niantic tribe and a Western Niantic tribe. And I have Eastern Niantic heritage. But when they moved in, they became fierce enemies, the Pequots of the Narragansetts. And they're called Pequots because of their leader, who was Wopequot. And a lot of times tribes will be named after leaders or the places that they were at. So the Pequots come in, and Pequot means the destroyers. And they're one of the fiercest foes for the Narragansetts. So you just have all of this infighting going on as the Europeans come in and start to utilize this infighting by pitting one tribe against another. So eventually in 1637, 1638, you have what they call the Pequot Wars, but it was really a massacre. And one of the things to understand is that we were definitely warlike people, but we did not do the sort of wholesale slaughtering, especially of women and children, that Europeans did, because in the Pequot massacres, they burned women and children alive and shot them dead when they were escaping. Now, my people were engaged in that along with the Mohegans. The Mohegans actually split from the Pequots because Uncas, the leader of the Mohegans, had a falling out. I believe it was with his brother. And this is often how tribes got started as well. You had a larger group, a falling out. This tribe group goes over here, identifies with this land area or this leader. Now they're a separate tribe. So the Mohegans and the Pequots are related. The Mohegans just ended up splitting apart and then fought with the Narragansetts and the I believe it's colony of Connecticut to attack the Pequots and Paugussets and a lot of the tribes that were down in that region. And around this time, you're going to have the first reserve ever in the continental, what is now United States, formed in 1638 in Connecticut with the Golden Hill Paugussets. And a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to interview Clan Mother Whitefawn, who is the hereditary clan mother, which is higher than a chief in their particular tribe. And she just talked about that history. But that was as early as 1638 that Indian slavery started after the Pequot War. And a lot of them got sent down into the Bahamas and Barbados and down in that area. So now you have the Pequot Wars out of the way. You have just a lot of internal politics and conflicts going on amongst the tribes as the Europeans get stronger and stronger. And you have a lot of fighting. What you have is a clash of understandings about land usage. They pitched this idea that we were all happy-go-lucky and friendly and got along and no one owned anything. That's not true. Wars were started over territorial boundaries. It's just the manner in which we use them was different. So if there was a field, everyone could go and use the field. If you were part of Mashapog, then that's the field that the Mashapog people use. So go there, utilize what you need, and just make sure that you respect other people. When the Europeans come, they start throwing up fences, and this particular piece right here is mine. You can't use it. And that's what causes a lot of conflicts for us, because you have certain chiefs who are friendly with the Europeans, who are allowing them to utilize space. And then you have other chiefs who don't like the fact that those other chiefs are allowing these Europeans to utilize space. And you have the Europeans seeing all of this and playing tribes against each other. So eventually, as we kind of get through that period, now you have strongholds and colonies in Plymouth Bay, Mass Bay. You have Connecticut. You have the settlement of Providence. You have Rhode Island, Aquidneck. All of these different settlements are popping up, but they're all here on permission of the crown. And this is another interesting thing to keep in mind as well. What you're going to find in a lot of these early treaties that were signed between these nations and the English crown was that it was understood that the lands here and the rights to the lands were all of the Indian tribes. And what you eventually see when you come up to the King Philip's War is that it's not so much the crown that the tribes are having issues with, but as Tomahawk mentioned, it's these criminals and it's these murderers that they sent over here that we're having issues with, because they're not respecting what the relationship was that was established with the treaties. The treaties were that Europeans could be here and utilize the lands in the same manner that we are, but never was it that we would be subject to Europeans or that they would be able to utilize lands and we couldn't. That was never the understanding. It was that they could be here and utilize these lands in the same manner that we were. And then when you had them doing what they were doing, now here comes the conflicts. Now here comes divisions within tribes, between chiefs. who are trying to build with Europeans, and chiefs who don't want to build with them. And there's just a lot of politics that go on. So eventually what you have is a situation where the agreement between the Pokanoket and the Plymouth Bay was that any issues that went on, if it was Europeans who did something, the Europeans would punish their own. And if it was the Indians who did something, the Indians would punish their own. And then a situation occurs and the Europeans punish the Indians. So the Indians want, they feel, okay, it's our turn. And the Europeans don't want to do that. So that's when the first treaty gets broken right there. And this is what really starts the King Philip's War and a lot of the issues that went on with that. Now, before I get into this timeline, I just want to share 2 links that people can look up on their own because they're absolutely fantastic resources for understanding from 2 different perspectives what the King Philip's War was looking like. The first one, Tomahawk, is the pictorial history of the King Philip's War, and this is in the National Archives. And I want to show you something really funny. When you get to that page, Tomahawk, just pull it up. I want to show everyone something really, really funny. It really makes me laugh when I see this.
Okay, I have the book up now. Is there a particular page?
Yeah, right when it opened it up, let me show you, and then I'll tell you what to do when I see it.
Okay. Oh, pardon. Still learning the software. Still learning the software. I forgot to press the button. Yeah, here we go.
Okay, there we go, right there. Now, normally when you go on to this, Tomahawk, click on the right where it says History of King Philip's War. Just click on that page.
Okay.
This is the page that it opens up to when you go for the original link. This is the page that it opens up to, and of course, naturally, if this is the page that it opens up to, you're gonna go right? You're gonna start to read the book, right? But what happens when you click left, Tomahawk?
Shows the previous pages.
That's a depiction of what King Philip looked like. Look at the brother's skin tone.
That's my skin tone.
Now, going back to the Verrazano situation that I was talking about earlier, when Verrazano describes my people, and this is why we really have to get away from this color thing, in my opinion. When Verrazano describes my people, he said we range in color, a tawny color. Some of us white like Europeans, others are tawny brown. So in my region up here from the very beginning, you're going to have people who look like that King Philip individual right there. And then you're going to have people, if you see my daughter when she was just showing her face, who are going to be that light-skinned but have the same parents. So when I get that certain Europeans wrote that the people here were a copper-colored race, I get that, but you should not apply that to everyone or assume because someone isn't that particular color that their people were not from here. You need to be into the genealogy and know who they actually are. Because when you go through this book, you're going to see depictions of Indians, once again, as dark as him, but with long flowing hair. You're going to see other pictures of Indians with very coarse, short hair that you might call an afro. And then you're going to see a depiction of an Indian who looks like he's white, but he's an Indian. So it's all about the bloodlines, not what we look like, and especially not nowadays, when you've had just so many intermarrieds and people just, sleeping with people and saying that it's not them. I mean, that stuff's been going on for generations. People ashamed to talk about who their parents are, people getting adopted. You just never really know. So you really want to get into people who their genealogy are, who their people are, so you understand who they are. Because once again, that notion of your skin tone or the shape of your nose or the type of your hair means you're from somewhere particular. That was instructed to us by European colonization, and we don't want to reduplicate that upon ourselves. So that's the first one. The second one that I want to touch base on, you don't even have to open it, Tomahawk, but if you just send it out to them, is the, and this is really good, the history of King Philip's War, because they've got pictures along with the description of what was going on. The second one is the book, Sachems of the Narragansetts by Howard Chapin. This right here, once again, you can grab it from Babel.Haiti Trust, and it just breaks down what was going on between the Narragansett chiefs and the Pokanokets and all these other ones as the lead up to the King Philip's War takes place. So those are 2 excellent resources if you want to know about the King Philip's War. What I'd like to do now, Tomahawk, is just switch to that timeline, King Philip's War, the World History Project, because it's really good, and I want everyone to understand exactly why they kind of are fearsome of us snapping out, of us remembering who we are, And as we go through, you'll see. So we'll start right here. The King Philip's War, it really begins in 1674. It's fought in 75, 76, but it really begins in 1674. And what you see right here is John Sassaman telling the Plymouth colony officials King Philip's arranging to attack on colonial settlements. John Sassaman's an Indian. He's a praying Indian. He's one of the converts who were seeing what was going on and thinking that, you know, it might be better to get ahead of what was coming and befriend these Europeans, hoping that perhaps maybe you stop some bigger things that are going to happen. So you see here, it's an Indian that's telling the colonists what is going on, and that's what's really instigating the King Philip's War, an Indian telling. It's not the Europeans coming and brutalizing, although that's what they were doing, stealing land and all that. But remember, we're still a force at this time, so they're not bullying the way that they do now. Back then, they're just being greedy and grabbing land and then trying to drag us into their courts. So then you have Mary Rowlandson is captured by Wampanoag Indians during a raid on a Lancaster village. And the thing that you're going to see as we go through this timeline is that there is aggression going back and forth over and over and over again. So Mary Rowlandson is captured by the Wampanoags. I believe, she's freed in May 2nd of 1675. And if I'm not mistaken, what's actually shared about her, she speaks about how respectful they were and how they didn't treat her badly. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's her. But she's freed. And then John Sassaman later on in June 8th, 1675, he's killed. And this is what I'm talking about. It was supposed to be the Indians that handled business for the Indians, but here you have Europeans killing Wampanoag Indians. So at this point, I believe it's Philip's older brother. Oh, I'm forgetting his name. I'll remember it in a moment, but he's in charge at this point, I do believe. And, you know, he's upset because they weren't supposed to do that. So he demands, you know, recompense on their end in regards to the language of the treaties. And the Europeans don't want to do that. They're not going to give up the people who killed the Indians. And that right there lets him know that this is not going to be something that is going to be a situation where they're respecting the treaties. So now you get into June 20th of 1675, and this is when a band of Pokanoket Indians attacks homesteads in Plymouth Colony and the settlement of Swansea. And the war's on at this point. So once the Pokanokets attack on June 20th, June 28th, settlers send an expedition, and they destroy a Wampanoag town at Mount Hope. This is around where the Pokanoket main headquarters is. July 8th, more Indians attack Middleborough and Dartmouth. And when they say attack, we're burning these villages to the ground. That's what's going on here. And I want you to understand that, because when you understand what was going on in this war, you understand why they have been so adamant about keeping us down since then. And this is going to be any Indian war that was going on. We were not docile people. We were not weak people. And the only reason in most cases that they were able to overcome us is because they were getting assistance from other Indians who were teaching them how to utilize the land and to fight against us and letting them know where our settlements were. So once again, the issue has always been us. The Europeans exploited it, but the issue was us.
Just like as it is today.
There you go. And nothing's changed. And once again, when you know the history, you can see the same game being played today. But look at this. July 8th, Native Americans attack settlements of Middleborough and Dartmouth. July 14th, Native Americans attack Mendelssohn settlement in Plymouth Colony. August 2nd, Native Americans attack Brookfield settlement in Plymouth Colony. And this is at a point where the Indian tribes are starting to come together. Now, you'll hear this term Wampanoag. It's important to understand what this term Wampanoag means. Wampen means Eastern, and Og is plural, so Easterners. And what Philip basically was saying to the tribes was, look, we've spent all of this time fighting amongst ourselves. Look at where it's gotten us with these Europeans. So let's put aside our individual divisions and let's join together on this banner of Wampanoag, the Easterners, and let's expel this European threat that's here. Now, even though he's doing that, my people did Narragansetts because we were still angry with the Pokanoket, because the Massasoit, his father was a Narragansett and his mother was a Nipmuc, but he's a Pokanoket. So we're looking at him like, no, you're a Narragansett, you're not a Pokanoket. But he's known Pokanoket and I'm Massasoit, I'm the great leader. So we have this division going on. That's what the fighting was all about from the very beginning. He's a big chief. No, you ain't no big chief. You're underneath us. And what goes on with our people today? What goes on with our people? This is my block, right? It's the same thing going on. Same thing going on, and the Europeans exploiting it. So you just have continuous attack of Indian village and rebuttal of Europeans. Now, my people at this time, because of those issues with the Poconokas, we're staying neutral in it, but we're accepting refugees from the war on the Indian side. And the Europeans are watching it, and they don't like it because they know how formidable we are. So sometime in 1675, they force us under duress to sign a treaty with them, agreeing to stay out of the war. And there's one chief from up here in the Coventry area named Pumham. He actually refused to sign the treaty. Someone signed on his behalf because he was like, I'm not signing anything that says I have to do anything with these Europeans. Who are that?
Like my boy Osceola.
You know what I'm saying? So you have these different personalities and different chiefs all involved in this war that's going on. But we're out of the war at this point. But we're taking in refugees. And ultimately what happens is the Europeans say, no, there's no way on earth that these Narragansetts are going to stay out of this war forever. Even though we were out of it, there's no way. And even though we just signed a treaty with them, there's no way they're going to stay out of this war forever. So on December 19th, they preemptively attacked us in what they call the Great Swamp Massacre, where they killed, they say 1,000. I think it's more 4,000 to 5,000 elders, women, and children and warriors. They burned the fort. Then as we started to run out of the fort, they would shoot us in the back. And that really decimated our tribe after that. That's where you'll find out after that point, there was a lot of intermarriage with other Indian tribes after that. There was a lot of intermarriage with African slaves that were brought up this way. There was a lot of intermarriage with Europeans. But that really decimated our people, that Great Swamp Massacre. So now you move after that. And after that point, all the Indian tribes in this region are fighting. You have Nipmunks. You have some Massachusetts, other praying Indians who stay out of it. You have Narragansetts. But interestingly enough, the Niantics stay out of it, who are extended cousins of the Narragansetts. Some of their chiefs fight, but for the most part, they stay out of it. And it's just war. To this date, if I'm not mistaken, King Philip's War is if not one of the bloodiest wars per capita in U.S. history. I think 66% of the Indian population was killed, and like 30 to 40% of the European population was killed. But don't quote me on those numbers, but it was something crazy like that. So eventually what you have is the Indians just get demoralized, especially when you see the level of carnage that's going on, especially when you have Mohegans and Pequots fighting on the side of the Europeans. Because remember, Narragansetts had problems with Pequots from the very beginning. Eventually, the Mohegans end up switching up on the Narragansetts, and then they end up having problems with the Narragansetts. They ended up killing the Narragansett chief Myantinomi, one of my grandfathers. One of the Mohegans did, and now they're fighting on the side of the Europeans. So the Indians that were fighting against the Europeans eventually end up getting demoralized. Their ranks are, shrinking. They're dying from disease, lack of food. Europeans are burning their food stores. And a lot of them start surrendering. And as they're surrendering, they're not being given mercy. They're either being slaughtered or else they're being shipped off as slaves. And this is where the King Philip's War really picks up on the Indian slavery, because they were shipping Indians up out of here wholesale. What you eventually have is King Philip realizing that things are kind of rough around this way, heading up to ask for support from the Mohawks. And when he gets up there, instead of supporting him, they end up attacking him. And that was really like the last blow. He ends up making his way back to his homelands in Patumtuck. And he ends up being shot to death by an Indian who was a Massachusetts. But interestingly enough, he was a convert. He was a praying Indian. But the reason he shot King Philip was because when they were trying to decide whether they should go to war or not, his brother had been very emphatic about not going to war with the Europeans, fearing what would happen. And King Philip got up in front of everyone and cut his head off. So that Indian shot King Philip in retaliation for what King Philip did to his brother. But he was doing it on behalf of the Europeans. Then after that, they courted King Philip's body. And they put his head on a pike on the road to Plymouth as a warning sign to all of the rest of the Indians to never, ever try to do something like that again. As I mentioned, after the King Philip's War, That's when Indian slavery starts wholesale. That's when you really see a lot of them shipped down into the Caribbean. That's where you have the Barbados, the 1676 Barbados prohibition against New England Indians, because we were coming out of a war and being shipped down into Barbados and the Caribbean. So we were helping to instigate the Indians down there. We were like, hey, look, we were just fighting up there. You can do it down here. And you see all of these slave insurrections on all of the plantations. That was the New England Indians down there riling up the Caribbean Indians. And that's a very, very dangerous combination. In certain instances, like they were outlawing those sorts of things because they were like, you can't control these people. They're not like the regular Indians we're used to dealing with. So once you get past the King Philip's War, that's when the European colonies really have a foothold now. And that's when they can start to expand and really shore up themselves. And that eventually leads to the revolution of 1776. And once again, speaking to the treaties, when you're talking the revolution, what the issue was the crown was saying to the colonists at the time, wait a minute, what are you all doing? We have treaties with these nations. You're supposed to be paying them for the usage of their lands. You're not supposed to, as a matter of fact, and there's documentation from the crown to the Plymouth, they were supposed to give all the land back to the Indians because it was the Indians' land. And this is why you had a lot of the Indians fighting with the British when it came to the revolution and stuff like that, because it was the American colonists who were breaking the treaties, putting the crown in a bad situation, who eventually revolted to become the Americans. They didn't want to be British anymore. Now they were Americans. And this is where the no taxation without representation, this is where all of that craziness comes from. And even if you notice in the Declaration of Independence, they say that the crown was causing insurrections among the merciless Indian savages. No, the crown, in its sort of colonized way, I guess the best way that it could, was trying to upkeep the treaties that it had signed because they were viable and they knew that the Americans were in violation of them. And from international law, if you violate the treaty, that could mean that the entire right to be in the land is gone. So the crown's thinking from an economic perspective, wait a minute, we built with these nations and what we had was going on was very well. What are you Americans doing? And here comes the revolution. So a lot of the revolution came out of, once again, the colonists stealing the land from the Indians and then looking at the crown like, we're not giving this back to these people. We just beat them and we enslaved them. You want us to give it back? Now we're not underneath you. And here comes the American Republic. So that's just kind of a general, like I said, please check out those links that Tomahawk will send to you. But that's just a very general overview of what went on. You can get into the number of battles that took place. You can talk about all the different tribes that were involved. But that war right there is fundamental to the start of what we now know today as the U.S. And when you see what went on there, particularly the fact of the fighting between the nations, and that's why you see me always doing my best to be working with and supporting the Poconokas and Nipmucks and all the tribes that are around here, because I'm learning from what happened in the 1600s. Because my people stayed out and didn't want to engage, because where the Narragansetts, we got preemptively attacked. So us staying out of it didn't help us. It made us a target. So it makes sense to unify, but we don't need to unify under the banner of just forgetting that we're different. That's not it either. It's remembering that we're different, but not allowing those differences to keep us from unifying. And that's why you will always continually hear me say, find out who your people are and get with them. We can't do the band thing. The band thing is not, it doesn't work. It's never worked. It won't work. And especially, I know, Tomahawk, you had asked some questions about like the conversations about the COVID vaccine and all that. My question is going to be to everyone, well, who's your nation and what is your nation doing to exert its sovereignty to not have to go through that? Because if you're not being backed up by a nation, sovereignty comes from a nation. The king, the president, is considered sovereign because they represent the nation. So they themselves aren't. The fact that they represent the nation is what makes them sovereign. And then the sovereign grants rights and privileges to those who are protected by the sovereign. So if you're not underneath a nation, you're assumed to be underneath the U.S. And if you're not underneath a nation and you're only underneath the U.S., then you need to be picking up those phones. You need to be calling your senators. You need to be calling your congressmen. You need to be calling all those people and telling them, no, that's not what you want. You need to be calling the new president-elect, all of that. If you are underneath your nation, then it's time for your nation to start looking at what its relationship is with this U.S. and what rights it has to enforce to protect itself. And I'll share this one last bit of jewel of information because it's something I learned. I'm just finishing up a federal Indian law class in law school from a fantastic professor by the name of James D. Diamond. You can Google him and check him out. But the entire U.S. jurisdiction over Indian tribes comes underneath the Commerce Clause. So Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, I believe, where Congress has the right to regulate, commerce between the states and with foreign nations and with the Indian tribes. So everything that they're arguing and saying that they can do is they're doing it because of a commercial relationship, and that's where treaties come in. That's where federal recognition comes in because it's a commercial status that you gain. But if you're not operating in those spaces, then commercially you don't exist, and there's no argument to be made. So it starts with getting with your people understanding what their relationships are, what their treaty rights are, if their treaties are still valid, because some of us are in situations where treaty rights were abrogated. But if your treaty rights are still valid, and if your treaty rights are still valid, how do you organize yourself commercially to be able to enforce them? But it's all going to start with your nation, because as you can see, going back then, you had tribal nations fighting with European colonists. They weren't focused on the individual Indians, although there were great chiefs they mentioned. It was nations. And that is the only way we're going to be able to fight this system. That's the only thing they respected when they got here. That's the only thing that gave them a formidable fight. And that's the only thing that's going to stop their jurisdiction right now. That and understanding the laws that they've been utilizing on us. So I'll stop there. I did a lot of talking, but I hope that was informative. And I do encourage everyone, just as a point of being in these lands that they now call the United States, take some time to get to learn about the King Philip's War. It's fundamental to what's going on today. And you'll see a lot of the same strategies utilized back then being utilized today.
Yo, Two Hawks, I appreciate everything you shared right here. Also, what I would like for the audience to be aware of is take a look at the events that was taking place in the Virginia colony area.
Absolutely. The Northeast.
The 1619 period leading up to events in 1674. All of these things was related. During this period, you had the United companies. All right, the Union companies is specifically what it's called.
Virginia Company, the London Bay Company, the Rhode Island Company, the Massachusetts Bay Company.
Do you know when the term white first comes into popular use here in the U.S. and even the concept of race?
I would say 1920s.
No. 1675, 1676, yes. With the Bacon Rebellion. That was down in Virginia. Now, mind you, this is the same time that the King Philip's War is going on. The Bacon Rebellion's going on. And what you're seeing happening is after these wars take place, the rich European robber barons are like, yo, we can't be fighting Indians and we can't be fighting poor people unifying with each other. So how do we deal with this? These Europeans over here who have lighter skin, they're now white. These Europeans and these, because not everyone who was of African heritage at that time came over as a slave. A lot of them came over sailing the ships. You have groups called Atlantic Creoles. Of course, you have the Moors. You have the Dutch East India Company, which was bringing East Indian coolies over here. So all of these people are now going to be black or colored or something not white. And we're not going to give these newly formed white people a better life. We're not going to give them more opportunities. We're just going to tell them that now that they're white, they're not white, and they're better than those people who aren't white. And this is where all the division starts. This is where the quote-unquote Negro Indian comes in. This is where this is where all of that stupidity starts, with rich Europeans trying to figure out a way to keep the people from being together and to put down the Indian tribes. This race thing is not real. Once again, it's a strategy that was utilized. And if we understand our history, we can see how it's still playing out today, and we can stop playing by those rules.
Well, you know, Two Hawks, I would definitely like to have a conversation with you about that. Because through my research, right? I've learned about, well, some years ago, I learned about Las Castas. All right. Now, the Spanish and the Portuguese, they had this system, this classification system, this social class structure, which was imported from their regions of Europe, North Africa, wherever else in the world in which they've colonized, right? And they brought that over into the Americas. And so what we observe looking at Las Castas is the fact for the Indians in some classifications or in some pyramid schemes, if you will, they had Indians above Africans, right? And others, they had Africans above Indians. And so this is a very dynamic topic here. And I definitely like to continue this with you at another time. Jay, please continue.
Well, I think you touched on something. I mean, it goes into what Two Hawks was saying, as far as when people were, I guess, at altercation times, we'll say, at times of war, conflict, and so on. There were people that utilized that to their advantage and, made certain treaties or made certain amends, we'll say, with tribes, only to know that they were already at odds with certain tribes and already had certain beefs for the most part. And what they did was accentuate that. What is the difference between a detective that goes into the hood and tells somebody, I got some dirt on you. I can, lock you up for 20 years, or you can give me information on Junebug. It's the same concept in the same situation. Nothing has changed except their name. They were the dragoons, they were the militias, and now they're the police officers in the precincts, when the towns used to be called precinct towns and militia towns, because they're gathering up all of these rowdy Indians, savages as they call them. But you put the sword and the gun to certain people as they're running, and their women and children are being chased and shot and murdered. How are these people supposed to react? And you had the praying Indians, you had different types of Indians that tried to assimilate, tried to negotiate, tried to understand that, it was probably inevitable that these people with bigger firepower, more money, and all sorts of, different nations of people, are coming here. We can't speak their languages. They know how to communicate. They're taking us. We're trying to use the Underground Railroad to get back to our native homelands, but we can't find a way. And, all through that, you have laws that are being created, which Two Hawks mentioned, that are, for one, declassifying people as, what their indigenous heritage may be to something artificial. And when you had mentioned when did the first time white came in, I said 1920s. I was thinking of the census and when it was classified and written and so on and so forth. But you guys are absolutely right. I mean, Tony, you talk about this all the time, the asiento and the classifications of many different things that are, out there that changed who we were. Tony, I don't know if you want to put that one link from the Virginia places, which should be in the chat. If you could put that up really quick. That talks about one particular nation in the 1600s. I believe it might be on the page after that. Or if you scroll down, it may be on there. I'm sorry. Just scroll down where it talks about the ginger skin tribe that was reclassified as Negro. And Two Hawks mentioned this many times, talking about the tax implications. And one of the things that was happening when people were losing their sovereignty and, they were given reservations or reserved parts of land that they negotiated so that other people can take the better parts of that land for the most part and utilize it for the resources in which a lot of those companies we mentioned, the Massachusetts Bay Company, the Dutch East India Company, they were importing, we'll say, cheap labor, indentured servants, and so on. And some of these people that were coming from other places, such as the Philippines, They were coming in and wanted to be classified as indigenous people because they were taken from their own lands as indigenous people. So Two Hawks had put me onto a book many, many moons ago, which was a reference to Asian slaves in colonial Mexico, I believe it was called. And that book really talked about how those people coming from other lands wanted to gain indigenous status. So if you're bringing people in that want to gain indigenous status and you're enslaving the people and locking them up and putting them out of their sovereign lands, then it's very easy to reclassify and allow certain other people to benefit and reap those benefits in the subsequent years to come. So that link there just really goes into that particular tribe, the Gingerskins, and how they were reclassified as Negro. Now, Tony, if you want to go into that, I know Two has talked about it many times, the Reclassification Act, that link should be in your email. Or the Appropriations Act. And Two Hawks can probably talk on this way better than I can. I came across this and looking up some of my own family history and how certain things were changed. That link will just definitely give you an overview of how and why sovereignty was shifted and who it was shifted to, and why now most of us are in debt to the government when we actually work the most, we put in the most, clock in the most hours, and have the lowest wages ever since jobs were created. So, here we're still fighting that same uphill battle. And as we take a look back into history, and this is why, Tony Tomahawk, you always talk about it all the time. If you don't know your history, then you're bound to repeat it. And when people don't know their history, they don't even know what's going on in their real time. And that's one of my favorite sayings, bringing history in real time, because everything that's been done before has already repeated itself several times over, and you're just living in the same matrix, but you don't even know it. And in order to change yourself and get out of that, this is a reason why you, myself, and Two Hawks are on this phone right now, trying to get this information out to people. I myself have been in my own family, have had, many things change within our own family history based on paper. And Tony, I don't know if you have those pictures that I have from my ancestry tree from my direct grandfather, my mother's father, in which on the same census, it has him labeled as a Native American Indian, as well as a Black Negro. So, these are some of the things that we have to take a look at and understand for ourselves, like what's going on here. Why would my family be reclassified from an Indian to a Negro or a Black person? And from my research and what I found is that people who don't have sovereignty in this country pay taxes. And we know that if you don't live on a reservation or are not tribal in any way, shape, or form, or traditional, so to speak, or carry on traditional ceremonies, they say that you're not an Indian. But when we look back at some of the things we discussed earlier, like the Native American cuisine, the soul food being connected to that, and the people who are reclassified or misclassified, or however you want to put it on paper, that's my great grandmother Susie. That's my grandfather's mother. Has her listed as an Indian Native American for her race, as well as Negro and Black. And if my grandfather's both his parents are Indian, how could he not be an Indian? But what is an Indian or a Black Indian or a Black African or a white African? As Two Hawks mentioned, those are misnomers, and those things are they're adjectives. Adjectives don't they can't stand for a person, place, or thing. So, when we understand language and we really take a look at what our ancestors wanted for us as far as education, understanding how to read and write, and, when we take those things and don't take it for granted and we actually educate ourselves, now when you look back, you say, damn, they were right. Maybe this is what I needed. I just needed to find just one little thing that could lead me to something else. And we have power in numbers. And I'll leave it at this. We just went through an election. We had the media and we had other people with knowledge or information leading most of the people that had no information or no knowledge to the polls. They went off of emotion. They voted off of the first time a black woman or what they call an Indian, but her parents come from Hindustan or Bharat or whatever other name they wanted to change it to. I mean, they're not the same people as us here in the Americas, but they're called Indian as well. So for someone being of Indian background, her father was a Jamaican, probably an Arawak, I would assume, if coming from that region.
Whoa.
But what's that?
Hey,
but this is what I'm saying. She don't classify as that.
I mean,
but what is the classification?
Man, I didn't want to get on that subject tonight, man, because I got an abundance of research on that, man.
But we won't touch it. I'm just going by what. This is my point. People go by what they read or hear in media without doing their own research. That's why it's important for people to understand what they're voting for, what they're thinking about, how they can take action, what they need to do, how they can group together as a unit, as a community, as a commune of people coming together. And, as we said, the Europeans, they had an unbelievable system. I mean, the founding fathers, for them, even said that, if things happen a certain way, there will be war. If people don't learn to do certain things together, there will be continuous bloodshed. So, who's it left on? It's left on us to do for us as a people, unite, get together, find the information we need to find and actually move forward as a people. So, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to really go down that rabbit hole. There's so much to talk about, in that regard of how we were misclassified. I know Two Hawks is looking at the chops, with all of the law information that he has, embedded in his mind. But once we understand that as an individual people, I think we'll be a lot farther ahead of the pace, than where we are now. Once we understand where we came from.
Got you. History, because you brought it up, man, and I hate that subject matter, man. I don't even like to get into it, but they were celebrating this female's situation over there in her father's ancestral village in Hindustan.
Her father's.
That's right. That's right. I have another link as well. I've presented this previously, but we got a lot to go in on. Her father is really from Hindustan.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, I did a video on my Tomahawk Tony channel a couple weeks ago where I showed all of that information. Yeah, I'll pull it up again another time. But it's real serious, man. It's a whole game being played internationally against our people, man. You know what I mean?
Well, I've never heard of somebody from Hindustan claiming to be black. So, they've always claimed to be Asian or whatever the case may be on the census. And, I just don't understand how she became the face of black women if she's not even that.
Hey, but brother, think what is black?
That's exactly.
It's just, and this is where I come from. There is no definitive black. It's all about what someone looks like. So when you look at her, she's black. You know what I'm saying? But when you look at her, because what is black? Is it what about her physical? Because now we start to talk culture, and that has nothing to do with black.
Yeah.
Your culture, your heritage, that has nothing to do with being black. None of that matters. How do you look? Do you look like you have a drop of Negro blood in you? You're black. And that's the real game. And I'm glad that Tomahawk brought that information up. But this, once again, should make us really want to look into our own genealogy and know who's talking to us, because you have people coming up who look just like you. And their ancestry could straight go back on both sides to somewhere else, but they look like you. And maybe this is part of the reason why so much turmoil is going on in the hood. Because maybe there's people there who literally know who they are and where they come from, and their mission is to be here and cause issues in our communities for us.
That's
So
right.
I'm very open to that conversation.
Yeah, that's something that needs to be had. That definitely is something that needs to be had, because you touched on a very good point. And I mean, this whole situation about race. I mean, they say Obama is the first black president, but he has a white mother. I mean, is he not white also? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's J. Cole got a white mother, but talks about, Negro freedom. And it's funny to me how nobody even looks at him and thinks about white, because he has melanin. He's colored, and they wouldn't even think that he goes home and kisses his mother every week, but he's out there talking about, nigga this and nigga that. So, for the most part, where everything is a facade when it comes to television and everything. And that was, the point that I was trying to make, was that people go off of emotion. They go off of feeling. They don't go off of facts. And that's why it's so imperative that we have conversations like this to bring certain facts to light. Like, there is someone who is an Indian as well as classified as a Negro. Well, why are they only classified as a Negro? And why can't Indian or Native American be what the classification of a Crispus Attucks is, when his last name means reindeer in his language, or deer in his language?
He's a Massachusetts Indian from Natick.
So, you know what I'm saying? And then Frederick Douglass had an Indian mother and a white father. And then he's brown, but he's the leader of the African American community. So, once we identify who we are, like you always say, too, is like, you got to know who you are. Like, you got to know. It's imperative.
Yo, I agree with you 100%, man. What I'm observing here is the fact that not enough truth, the true voices of the people has been heard. We have a lot of foreign contractors. I mean, these people don't work for us. Mm-hmm. They don't work for the Aboriginal American nations and peoples and all of that. They don't work for them. They work for the foreigners. You know what I'm saying? As a result, they support the foreign interests. I mean, to constantly, generation after generation now, right? The foreigners have embedded in their text, the Negro nations of the Americas, right? Constantine Rafinsky wrote this back in the 1700s. Negro de Terra out of the 15th century going into the 16th century. They was aware of the true names of our people. They took the time to study us, as Two Hawks was saying earlier. Yeah, this is part of their game here. And so, with the Indian schools that was present, this Christian schools / Indian schools, which became the HBCUs and Ivy League schools and etc. You know what I'm saying? We have what we have today, a whole lot of confusion. And, these contractors are positioned so that they speak louder than the people. And the people are to look up to them. And this to me is a major problem. And this classification, I'm glad you brought this point up about the Giga skin, right? Because what I learned in my research, right, is the fact, if you're an Indian in colonial areas, right, that you were embraced by enumeration for tax purposes, right? Mm-hmm. If you was a wild Indian living in your natural habitat, right? I mean, by default, all of this is our natural habitat. But however, if you're in a colonial environment, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to call you a Negro because we can. We're embracing you by enumeration, whether you want to be embraced or not.
Yeah, and the first time they used Indian on the census, I believe it was 1860, and that was right before the Civil War, obviously, and the majority of us weren't even on censuses with names, or maybe had a name, or maybe had a number, but most of us didn't have a first and last name on a lot of the censuses between 1790 and 1860, for the most part, because a lot of us actually were living in what we called Indian Territory from 1763 after the proclamation line signed by Charles II. And going into the wars, Two Hawks mentioned a lot of the different Indian wars that were taking place, especially in the Southeast, starting with the Yamasee Wars in the 1700s, early 1700s. Then you go, that was right after the King Philip's War. So a lot of them that probably were escaping away from slavery were migrating into the Yamasee areas, into the southeastern areas, and even coming away from the Caribbean back to the mainland. So, you get a lot of people migrating back up north in the early 1900s and that's right after the Reconstruction era, when they were, I guess, given freedom, but weren't given any land, weren't given any resources, weren't given any jobs or trading things to learn how to, skills or anything like that. So, if you don't let people read and write for 200 years, and, you have 3 or 4 generations just enslaved and moving around, they don't know where they're going. I mean, most of these people had no idea of what their heritage was. They knew that their people were certain people, but they just didn't know or know how to reclaim that. And now we're starting to see, due to the availability of information that's being let go. I just want to take one quick point back to the King Philip's War, and a reference that I actually found. Jill Lepore, who was a Harvard scholar, Lepore. She wrote a book called The Name of War. And that book, she talked about the happenings that Two Hawks mentioned about King Philip, and how his head was paraded around, and, how they, did certain things to some of the praying Indians. And some of these people actually wrote written accounts to England, because England was the sovereign body at that particular time, and wrote to King Charles and said, there are people here that, we helped you fight, such and such Indians or other, tribes or whatever, and you're selling us into slavery. My sister, like, she's my sister. How are you sending her into slavery in the Caribbean and Barbados? So, these things were actually written. They were, petitioned to England. So going back down into the early 1700s, right after that, you had my people, the Yamacraw Indians, Tamachichi, going over to England and also meeting the king. And right, this is right before, I guess, James Oglethorpe was his name. He was a governor. He was the first governor of Georgia. And Georgia, obviously, I'm not saying King Charles, King George was the one who set up, obviously, Georgia. And for the most part, those time periods were time periods in which they were having wars with the indigenous people, the Yamassees, the Cherokees, the Uchis, the Seminoles. All of the, they're saying that Seminoles ran into Florida, and they were termed Seminole because that meant, slave or runaway or whatever the case may be. But then we come to find out today that there's people that live in Nacimiento, Mexico, who are descendants, what they call Black Muskogos. And these people are people who sing Negro spirituals that we sing in church, or we sang in church growing up for the most part. And she's from Florida, but she lives in Mexico, and she's been there, or her family's been there for the past 100 and some odd years, since King Osceola from the Red Stick Creeks, Okechiki, I'm saying his name wrong, forgive me, and then John Horse. D. Kuaskui, I believe his name was, the other person I mentioned. All three of them were locked up in prison in a fort down in I believe it was called Fort Negro, down in Florida. Now, all of these people who were displaced through a diaspora because of the fact that they were going through wars, and they were getting, just dismantled. So they had to come together. And Tamachichi named that tribe the Yamacraw tribe after they came together after a certain war. And, I say all of this because of the fact that now, the original tribe in which he said to King George that we came from was the Itzate tribe. Okay, the Itzate tribe, I come to find out, was a Hittichi speaker, and lo and behold, those people came from Mexico after they were pushed out in the 1500s. Then you have people like Norton or Thornton, Tom Thornton, who is a scholar out of Georgia, and then you have other people who have written accounts of the migration of Maya Indians into the southeastern regions. So now you're taking it a little further back, and now you find out that you're a Creek Indian, but now you find out that the Creek Indians, some of them migrated after they were, disbanded as a tribe or as a nation in the 1500s. When you hear about Pizarro and the fall of the Inca and the fall of the Aztec Empire. Where did these people go? Did they disappear? Did they fall off the face of the earth? But if you do a little history research, you'll find out that they migrated. And some of those people could be some of your ancestors, you know, that migrated from those locations. And it makes a lot more sense to me that you would have a lot of people here already, and to be able to be enslaved, to learn how to grow crops and do different things from them over time, to create the companies you create, to have the ownership of, you know, different things that you've had since the beginning of the, you know, the incorporations. You got Aunt Jemima. That's a syrup. Molasses comes from, you know, certain tree that they utilize here, and found that we ate Johnny cakes and all sorts of things. And they use, you know, the molasses to eat it with, and it become pancakes and syrup. And, you know, they commercialize that, and now they're still getting paid off of it. But now, you know, there's jokes on Saturday Night Live that, you know, Aunt Jemima got fired, you know, during the COVID, and Uncle Ben is losing his job too. And these, you know, these types of things that we look at, we don't even have a clue that, you know, that syrup was invented or came from the people of the Southeast region for the most part, or that Johnny cakes or hoe cakes are indigenous to our people, but we grew up on those. You know, if we learn to understand who we are, you know, I think going forward, we have a greater idea of what we need as a people, how we can move forward, and what it's going to take. So, you know, having conversations where, you know, I'm hearing people talk about black this and black that and Black Lives Matter. I mean, for me, I don't know what a black life is, but I know that my brown ass matters. And you know what I'm saying? If I matter, my son matters. And if that, you know, if I feel like, you know, we're not mattering, then I'm going to do something about it. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm talking to you guys, trying to help, you know, develop a relationship where we can have open dialogue and actually have a voice to speak for ourselves. We need representation. We need somebody to actually, you know, check some of these people that are out there. And who else is it going to be? You know, I vote for Two Hawks, but you know, he got too much going on right now. One of these days, it's gonna come to fruition, brother.
Well, yo, I appreciate both y'all time. We about to hit the 2-hour mark. You know what I mean? I was looking at getting into some more, but I already knew that we won't end up doing a series, man. So definitely, Two Hawks, you're more than welcome to join us. You know, anytime. You know, Jay, of course, you know, we got a lot to get into already. You know, I know Two Hawks is busy. He, you know what I mean? He can't be president right now. So, you know, he tightened up some things, but it's all good, man. I
really appreciate him being here, man. And, you know, I just want to let you know, brother, like ever since I started, you know, seeing the information that you've been putting out and, you know, some of the traditional things that you've been doing has actually made me go harder in finding out where my peoples are and who they are and what we do. And, you know, I'm just trying to do that and build that community within my own family and just taking it one step at a time. You know, I'm not sitting here saying that we all got to fight and Indians got to do this and do that. I'm one man. You know what I'm saying? I learn from people that I see that, you know, I can learn from. And you're one of those people. I just want to say thank you for all you do for representing, you know, indigenous peoples and, you know, taking on that fight. Appreciate
I'm looking forward to doing more. You know what I mean? Like, yo, it's a lot to be done out here, man. And you know, I'm just grateful to be able to coordinate with people like you, Two Hawks, Chief Taregua, and there's so many other good peoples across the country throughout our lands. You know what I mean? That have good experience, that have knowledge, wisdom, true understanding, and you know, understand the value and importance of what has happened and what we need to make happen for our future. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of legal citations out here. You know, I posted it, but you know, these things have to be effectively defined for the people. And so I don't want to talk too much. I don't want you to burn that mac and cheese. You feel me?
Oh no, it's good. It's good. I got people on.
Good. You know, I like it a little burnt. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean, not overkill. You feel me? So yeah. Yo, Two Hawks. It's on you. You know, if you want to close out. You know what I mean? However y'all want to do it. It's all good.
Yeah, I just say, you know, thank you, gentlemen, for the good words. Please know that is medicine to my spirit because, you know, I'm just doing what I felt I was tasked to do. You know, it was something that I received from my grandmother when she passed, just trying to figure out how I could honor her better. And I know that she did the same for those who came before her. So all you're doing by doing what you're doing is following in the path of those that came before you, and honoring your mother and your father. Like it even says in the Bible, you know, honor your mother and your father that your days on the earth may be long. And if you think about it, because we don't know who we are, we caught up in all sorts of stuff that just cuts our lifestyle short. So these are spiritual understandings that we can and should be understanding and applying to today. So I honor and salute you, gentlemen, for being voices as well. If you find any value in the things that I share, please give that credit first to Creator above for allowing me to have it, and then to those individuals who have passed it on. And as is the responsibility of anyone, when you learn something, pass it on to someone else who's looking to learn something as well. And if more of us do that, we'll all be in a better space. So, many blessings to you all. Happy harvest gathering. Never mind Thanksgiving, but happy harvest gathering for our culture and for our ancestors and the ways that they have always done things. Make sure to get a big plate, make sure to fill up, and make sure to spend as much time in as appropriate manner with your family. That's what's important. And if these Europeans happen to do it at this time, hey, we'll adapt to the times like we've always done. And for everyone out there listening, just thank you all for having an interest in who you are, and many blessings to all of you on your path to rediscovery, because it's important.
That was beautiful. I really don't have much to say on top of that, man. I just want to thank you both, man, for being two gentlemen in this realm of what we do. And I know the conversations aren't easy. I know the hours are long studying, and as much time as I put in doing things, I know it gets long. And I just appreciate your endurance. And Tony, I thank you for always reaching out and trying to make a connection somehow, some way. And I mean, you're a very integral part in a lot of this information that's being presented to people. And I know how passionate you are about it. And sometimes I got to tell you, just relax. You can't do everything in one day. And, for the most part, it's going to happen, man. People are going to understand, the importance of what types of things Two Hawks is talking about when it comes to our heritage, and just understanding the laws and how things were shaped. And once you understand that, then you can actually take action, the appropriate steps in order to make some sort of change. And if you want to be the change, then you got to actually do a little bit of the legwork. It's not easy. It's not, it's not that difficult if you're, looking in the right places and trying to network with the right resources. And, I'll just leave it at this, man. Like, continue on your path. I mean, if you're searching and you don't know something or you can't find something, don't be discouraged. Those family histories, they usually turn out to be pretty accurate, when you start digging. And, the more you dig, the more you'll find. Don't be afraid to ask somebody something. Don't feel like your question is dumb, because I've had some real dumb questions in my mind, but for the most part, it's helped me to carry on and to be very humble about who I am and what I'm doing. And, I don't, believe I have the best information out there. Anything anybody sees me put out, it's because I want people to know what the hell I know. And if there's something that I find to be shady, I'm going to throw it out there for people to, look at it themselves. I try to speak my truth as much as I possibly can. And, I'm not here trying to claim to be top chief, top Indian. I'm just one person, one man, trying to do the Creator's work, man. And that's it. And if I can spread that love, I'll do it any time of the day, any day of the week. So, with that said, I just want to thank you two gentlemen. Enjoy your harvest festivals. Enjoy your thanks for giving days, and, give reverence and praise to, the people that you love and care about. And that's it, man. Take care of home, take care of your communities, and we can get this done, man. We can get it done.
Yo, much appreciation. I'll say this, in closing, based on everything that we shared here, and there will be another one. You know what I'm saying? I'm thinking I'm gonna go live in the morning. and go into some of these raw details. Just set it off early in the morning, because I would like for the people to be aware of how important it is for y'all to be together. Our people need to be together. You know what I'm saying? Working together. You know what I mean? Securing the bonds and relations with each other. You know what I mean? Reducing the unnecessary conflicts based upon the colonization and the commercialization of our resources, including our own people. You know what I'm saying? They've commercialized our people. We have control of that. You know what I'm saying? So, this harvest season, what you do with harvest, you gather those elements. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you invested, you planted those seeds, get those together. You know what I mean? Take care of yourselves out here, just like how you said, Jay. So appreciate y'all as always. You know what I mean? Y'all have a great evening. Let me know y'all availability so we can, you know what I mean, go into the next and the next and the next, you know what I mean? Because I got a list of things to get into, you know what I mean? So definitely, y'all have a great evening. You know what I mean? And catch y'all next time, all right?
Talk to you next time, bro.
Absolutely. Be good. Appreciate you.